What if the factors that fuel human trafficking aren't just forces out there, but right here, shaping the world we live in every day? Here, we take an unflinching look at how cultural influence, hidden pain, and exploitative systems contribute to the demand for commercial sex. This isn't just another awareness podcast about a social issue. It's about people, the human stories of those harmed, those healing, and those waking up to their role in change. Welcome to the Demand Disruption Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Demand Disruption Podcast. My name is Phuong, and I've just been really thrilled to be able to introduce this special episode that we're having. Just because it's something that, as an anti-trafficking organization, as a part of a movement, we don't really get a chance to learn more about just because there's not a lot of information out there. But what you're about to hear is a conversation that we had last year with Victoria Sinis of Creating Gems. You know, when we first heard about Victoria's story, as an organization that fights the demand for trafficking, and like I said, you know, we haven't heard too much about OnlyFans, and also someone that's raising the alarm themselves as a person that was on the inside to the exploitation that was existing in this platform. We had to record a conversation with her. We had to learn from her. And just to kind of tell you a little bit about her, she used to be an OnlyFans manager. And so first, what is OnlyFans? OnlyFans, it's a subscriber-based platform. So essentially, if you have a skill or a talent and you want to perform it or, share about it, you can. So for instance, if you're a chef, and you want to share your recipes, for instance, or if you're a musician and you want to, play a concerto, right? Like, fans could, pay, an amount and they could experience this. And, ideally, it's supposed to be a place where, people could, make some income based off of things that they're passionate about. But unfortunately, these days, we're seeing this shift of OnlyFans, becoming a place that, unfortunately, is a host for pornographic material. And even more so alarming, a place that's targeting young adults to be performers on this platform. And so Victoria's story, as a person that was a manager at an OnlyFans agency, there are these agencies essentially that work to build these young models, pages and profiles. And there's a lot of things that go into, how to first manipulate and encourage, young women to join this platform. But then also, setting the premise of, what do they need to do to become viral? What do they need to do to continue to make income, to, bring in money, not just for them, because we think, maybe we think that OnlyFans is empowering because, this young woman is being able to do what she wants. But actually, these agencies, they take cuts from, their models' work. And actually, sometimes, she describes they're doing things that they're not comfortable with, and that there's levels to what they're requiring. These agencies are requiring these young women to do in order to, continue to bring in profit and income. And so I hope you hear this conversation that we have with her and learn more about, this world of OnlyFans that we're not aware of. And also hear too, her realization of how this actually isn't a tool of self-empowerment. She saw herself firsthand how it's actually a tool of exploitation, and how it's, not only a danger to our youth, but also playing a contributing factor into what our organization talks about the demand for human trafficking.
Yeah, so my name's Victoria Sinis, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. And yeah, we're just going to kind of chat about what led me to working for an OnlyFans agency. So to take it back to 2023, I was actually approached by a very close personal friend of mine. And they came to me with this business concept of wanting to start this thing called an OnlyFans agency. And so my background's actually in business and startup and marketing and all of that. And the reason why they wanted to start an agency is they actually had people in their world who were already doing this thing called OnlyFans, and they were complaining about their agency. So my friend was like, I feel like this could be a really great business. Is that something that you're interested in doing with us, basically? And so I guess to kind of take it back as well, my lens of what I thought OnlyFans was, is I didn't really know what it was. I was like, this is just kind of a term that's been like interjected into our society and our culture. Everywhere you see it's a positive. People make a lot of money on there. And I guess the people that I knew that were in OnlyFans, I was like, oh, well, they were really poor. Now they kind of seem rich. I think that you can just like sell your feet on there. I don't know, but this seems like a liberating thing. I was like, cool, sure, like let's go for it, type of thing. And so that's kind of how I got introduced into saying yes or thinking that it was okay. And I love business. I actually left building one of my other best friend's businesses and helping her in hospitality. And so I was like, I need to get out of hospo. Like that was exhausting. So coming into something that's more digitized and everything, I was like, sick, like this will be super fun. So that was kind of my lens of how I got involved in the agency and everything like that. And I guess not a lot of people have kind of heard of an OnlyFans agency. It's just, and so the way that I like to kind of explain what an agency is and why it exists and the whole purpose of it is that if we look at OnlyFans like a business, one of the biggest allures of OnlyFans is the fact that you can have like a one-on-one conversation. So I guess you can say in like traditional pornography that you see online, it's like nameless and faceless people. So you don't really have this like connection, but on OnlyFans, you can actually chat and directly message the girl. Yeah. And so the whole allure is that you're maybe your favorite influencer or your favorite celebrity. I can jump onto OnlyFans and talk with her and ask her for custom requests and all these different things. But if you think about that from a logistical perspective, if you have a girl that has hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram and they're funneling all of their followers to OnlyFans and they're sitting there having to have conversations 7 days a week, 24/7 across all these different time zones.
It's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. So that's why they have to offset all that work. And so that's where agencies come in, and that's kind of why they exist. Their main role is basically to maximize girls' OnlyFans accounts and make as much money as possible off them. And so basically you onboard a girl and it's basically every single question you can think of, the most minute details, and that gets turned into this thing called a brief. And so the brief then is given to these things called chatters. And so chatters is, again, if you're looking at this from a business perspective, we're not going to sit there and be the ones chatting and pretending to be the girl because, again, that's not wise. Yeah. So you give it to these people that are traditionally from like third world countries. So mainly chatters are from places like India and the Philippines, and ours were all from the Philippines. And so they're people that are actually trained in this thing that we would call the girlfriend experience. And their main role is like a commission, like sales role. Yeah. And so the whole point is they're supposed to sit there and chat away, pretending to be the girl from this brief that we've given them and make as much money as possible off these accounts. And so they literally would come on, they would work like 6 to 7 days a week, anywhere from like 12 to 16 hour day shifts for $1 to $5 an hour. So really, really cheap labor. And their role is to, make as much money as possible. And so that's kind of briefly, I guess, what account management is. As well involved in that is like account audits. What's the health of the account? How can we maximize what subscribers are interacting the most? What have they purchased? How much do they purchase for? And I guess every single kind of small detail you can think about an account and how to make it maximize. So element number 2 of the agency is actually what my role and responsibility was, and it's the marketing. Because again, there's such a stigma that, I can just jump onto OnlyFans and, it's in the shadows and I'll make a bunch of money and it's all hush hush. But what people don't realize is, to say if you're realistically someone who has like 200 followers on Instagram and you're jumping on OnlyFans, well, where are you getting all your subscribers from? So that's why you have to market your OnlyFans. And so that's where I would come in. And so from the onboarding, my role was to do a marketing call with the girls, basically, and to get them really excited about all of the requirements. And the reason why I want to emphasize that is, again, people think, oh, it's just easy, you just jump on. But we can already see that OnlyFans content-wise, there's a lot of requirements. And then now there's also marketing requirements. And so I'd get on the phone with the girls and basically run through what we expect them to do. And what that was is we would ask them to create 3 to 5 TikTok accounts. And on those 3 to 5 TikTok accounts, every single day, we would ask them to create 5 unique videos per account. So we're asking for basically 20 unique videos every single day across these TikTok accounts. And what we did is we had actually hired an expert who would study algorithms and trends. And so every single day, this expert was sending us on Telegram these very specific, provocative, curated videos. So they had trending sounds, trending hashtags, everything you can think of, basically. And so we would send them to the girls and they would have to recreate them. Doing this method, we got one girl on one video to 2.2 million views on one of her TikToks. And so you can see that this is like, I like to put it like, if this is one agency in Australia, one girl, one video that has that much influence and pull, what are we seeing on, I guess, like a global cultural scale of hypersexualized intent, hypersexualized content that is targeted at people? And so there's a whole, I guess, greater cultural conversation we can have about that. What's that doing for young men and young women? But that's just TikTok. And so from there, you'd kind of take those TikTok videos and you'd convert them into Instagram videos. And on Instagram, you'd have multiple accounts as well. You'd have like your main account, then you'd have perhaps like another 3 of these accounts that are just filled with hypersexualized videos. And it all goes into funneling systems. And so it's like, oh, you're on TikTok and oh, you see this, and then you scroll, you see more. Then before you know it, how have I ended up? And I'm at OnlyFans. Then from there, you can kind of get into all these other complexities of Reddit. And with Reddit, there's like a whole sub-industry that is about promoting girls on OnlyFans. And we were having conversations with people in Germany and in the Ukraine and how do they do it, and having to learn about VPNs and proxies and aged Reddit accounts and all these different things. And then how to funnel that to OnlyFans. Twitter at the time, which is now X, was able to post basically anything you wanted, the same as Reddit. And so again, we were on like Snapchats. We're looking at Snapchat, dating apps, as Reddit, Twitter, any type of digital platform that you can think of. There's probably agencies that are promoting girls' OnlyFans on these platforms. So marketing in itself is like a whole entire element. So that was my role. And so my role was to make sure that the girls were doing the requirements, checking in on their social media accounts. Are they doing, these unique postings, and then making sure all the funnels and the flow of it was there. And then from there, you kind of come into the third element of an agency. And so the third element is recruitment. So again, if we're looking at this just purely through like a business lens, you need clients. And what we had noticed as we kind of had gone on at the agency is, at the time when I was working there, the top 3 categories in pornography was teen, fresh teen, and barely legal. And one of the girls at the agency that we were representing, we would actually lie and say that she was fresh 18. She wasn't, she was like 21 or something. But she made the most money. And so we're like, oh, okay, clearly there's a pattern here. So as we're recruiting, we were actually started to look for girls that looked young. And so there was that element on, you'd be on TikTok, you'd be on Instagram, but the most important part was, are they already posting provocative content? Because that would tell us that either they're more likely to do something like OnlyFans, or perhaps they already have an OnlyFans account. So you would scroll through social media and basically cold message these girls. And so we had a account for the agency, and obviously it didn't say OnlyFans management account. But on this page, we would legitimately throw these lavish parties in multi-million-dollar houses. We had the cars, we had the outfits, we had the dinners, we had everything. And we would say, do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to be a part of this sisterhood? Come be a part of this community. If you want all these things, and again, this is the inadvertent what we're promoting, then you come hang out with us, but you have to do OnlyFans. And people have asked, like, kind of like, what was your hit rate with all of this? And honestly, it was realistically like 100%. Of course, people are going to be interested in the lifestyle, in the eliteness of this and all of that. And so that was kind of like the recruitment process. So to tie it all in, I guess the main elements, especially of the agency that I worked at, was the account management part, which is the OnlyFans side and the OnlyFans backend. Then there's this marketing part, which is how do you bring people into OnlyFans and how do you also entice people to want to do OnlyFans? And then the third element, which is the recruitment part.
One of the things, of the many things you were saying that fascinates me is just the thought about the subscriber, the person who is going in and seeing a product. I have all the control, I have all the power, I'm paying the money, so I get to now have a relationship on top of whatever sexual satisfaction I'm gaining from the visual and that person doing what I want them to do. It's a webcam plus a personal relationship is what it is, and it has a level of this legitimacy. But the other thing that it does, it puts them in a state of really a fantasy that's just not happening. You were talking about chatters before. What kind of transparency would you say there is through OnlyFans, through the relationship they think they're having with that girl, with that model, with that content creator? How much transparency do they have that they're actually probably not talking to that person?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were asking that. I'm like, there's no transparency. I don't even think that that's something that we can say, because the whole point of an agency is it's this underground, in the shadows thing. Because if people knew, subscribers, that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not talking to that Instagram girl, I'm not talking to that celebrity, I'm talking to some guy in the Philippines, and this is a sales job, and I'm getting manipulated into thinking that I have a relationship with this girl so you can make money off me. Like, that shatters the illusion and that shatters the allure. But that's the whole point, is you're trying your best to represent this girl and to have these specific conversations with men to make them feel like this girl likes them, to make him feel like he's seen and he's important and he's loved and all these things. And it's a really interesting, I think, complexity about a subscriber, because there is this weird sense of entitlement of, hey, I'm coming here and I want this and I expect this. But then there's also this weird power play with the girl of, like, you're my subscriber and so it gets really weird and twisted almost, in a sense. It's not this straight cut of, like, does that, like, this like power dynamic. Yeah,
so much so. And when we think about the work we do with buyers, we can say that this is about sex. And at its core, that could be the topic, but it's really, really not. It is about so many other things that are secondary and tertiary, that I'm pursuing sex because there's a gratification aspect to that. But the other gratification comes in different ways. I get to choose from this menu on a porn site of the relationship, that what I want to watch, how I want to be gratified. So I'm in all of this control. And then on that porn site, there's also this pop-up, this webcam. Well, now I can do that one-on-one with a person, but I still have entitlement because I'm paying for it now. I have even more entitlement, and I'm calling the shots. You do what I say. And as unsettling as that is, we have to understand that goes deeper than sex. That is, I can't be rejected. There's really, I call the shots. I'm going to be able to make this person do what I want. And because of this dynamic, it takes on so many more levels of not only compulsion and addiction that eventually forms, but this false fulfillment of something that you think you want. But look how far it goes. It never is fulfilling, because on that same site, right, there's a meet local girls. Oh, now I can do it in real life. We talk about an escalation dynamic in what we do. But when you're talking about this creation of a fantasy of a relationship, it further compounds, okay, I'm getting sexual gratification through this simulated sexual relationship. And this person knows my name. And when I text her and say, hey, how's your whatever personal thing? How's that going? And she responds, we really have a relationship. And the deception that is on both sides of that, of the industry, the demand, and the person who is also being compelled in many ways to create all that content you were talking about and then curtail this content, well, that's really not getting attention. That's why you're not making much money. Now you have to do this. The meeting point of manipulation and deception creates a marketplace that is all based on nothing, but it continually has this back and forth of deception and manipulation. It just fascinates me.
Yeah, and I think a really unique point that perhaps you guys will be able to speak on really well in this conversation about buyers is, I was just thinking as you were talking as well, that I think the statistic is like 89.7% of subscribers on OnlyFans are supposedly married. And I think that there's a really unique element in this as well of like, what is happening, I guess, in the real world for married men to be coming onto a porn platform and getting the girlfriend experience and it's working. And I think that there's like a greater cultural conversation that needs to be had from like a buyer perspective on like, why is this working? Why are men getting so enticed by these influencers if they are in relationships, if they are married? And why is this such, I think I saw a statistic that said 500,000 people a day are signing up to OnlyFans. So this is a huge phenomenon, and it's about, again, as you said, this deeper thing. It's not potentially, of course, I'm sure there's those elements of sex and sexual gratifications, but it seems like there's a deeper thing here about relationships and about, I don't know, being seen, being discovered, but on both ends.
Yeah. One of the things we find talking to men at the point of arrest, once we get past the whole situation of being arrested, we start to ask some open-ended questions. And one of the very simple questions is, what brought you here today? And the number of times the word lonely makes it into that description staggered me. I thought I really would understand this buyer. Well, because I know what that escalation looks like. I'm going to pay for sex because I was having a simulated version of it, and now it's just not enough. So that's really where I thought all the answers would be. And many of them do. But the words like lonely, the words like connection, it's really very sad. What they're paying for is not. It's a feeling. It's not fulfilling. There's a huge difference. We have gotten so preoccupied with the feeling of a rush of dopamine because I'm seeing sex, or I'm calling the shot and I'm in control. Whatever gets that rush for us, we're just feeling that. But there will never be fulfillment. And when there's not fulfillment, I will keep pursuing. And that's part of the business model on both sides. How do I keep fulfilling? One of our buyers was talking about greed. Looking back, I just kept thinking, well, that was nice. I wonder how much more I could get. And that led him to a strip club from a porn site. And then that's what led him to buy sex. How much more? And he's just like, he got quiet for about 10 seconds because you could see he was working it out. But what he was working out was that I was chasing this greed, never caring about that girl's situation. She was just fulfilling something I thought I wanted, and it was never enough. And it just seems to be an absolute theme in what we're both talking about.
I have a question. So do you think, and it's a question for both of you, is there a difference from your point of view to the impact on relationships for a married man to be engaging with pornography versus OnlyFans?
Well, the exact same thing. And I think that people think that even what we're talking about, just say that the pornography industry, the sex industry, it's over here and OnlyFans is over here. It is literally the exact same thing. And even I think that we need to kind of shatter a lot of barriers and terminology around that. You get to the point of buying sex, like physically, but that's exactly what you're doing on OnlyFans. There's no barrier. You're purchasing sex, even if it's in a digital capacity. And like, even when we talk about recruitment or anything, there's no difference between me going on the street and going up to young girls and being like, hey, I think you're cute. Do you want to come do porn? Than me doing it digitally. And I think that that's a really important emphasis that I hope that a lot of people can have a lens of that now, that OnlyFans is no different to every single thing that is happening in the porn industry and in the sex industry and in the exploitation industry. It is the exact same thing. And I think that if we have that lens on, then we can maybe tackle this problem from a holistic perspective. But then to talk about, I guess, what is it doing? Well, I feel like it's doing the exact same damages that it would if you're jumping on Pornhub or if you're going to a brothel, if you're going to a strip club. All those damaging effects that those things have will also be just as damaging if you're buying porn on OnlyFans from your favorite influencer. Yeah.
Just hearing that, I'm thinking from a buyer perspective. One of the reasons I believe there was such a flood for OnlyFans was because the market already existed. But now, one of the key things when it comes to buyers that we have learned, there are things like objectification, of course, right? You're a thing that gratifies me, so you're an object, not a person. Okay, we got that. That's pretty basic. Now let's just keep going and talk about other words. I'm justified. because you clearly want to do this. Now, with the porn industry, let's look at it this way. If I say Pornhub or X videos, and then I say OnlyFans, which one sounds like there's more agency, more individual, more decision-making, more rights, more empowerment? It's going to be the OnlyFans one because we've legitimized it enough in our society. But as a buyer, as a consumer, wait, I can go and do this thing that celebrities reference with regularity, that is a part of our nomenclature now, that is apparently accepted and has legitimacy, but it's the same as what I was doing over here in the shadows. Okay, well, that's a flood. That opens up justification. That opens up access. But then the entitlement, that comes along with it also. Not only can I have it, but I can have it in a way where people talk openly about it and joke about it. Now, I'm not going to go and advertise that I have a video sexual relationship with a woman on OnlyFans, maybe. But if it came up, it's just OnlyFans. It gives an alibi. It gives this conduit to some sort of legitimacy to take the thing that I already wanted and was getting over here. That, to me, is why there was such a flooded growth of OnlyFans. And why, what did you say, 500,000?
Yeah, supposedly 500,000 people a day are signing up.
If that were 500,000 a month, it would be probably the most accelerated growth of any business that we could point our finger to, any business. And see how it's compounding and growing. There's going to be more need for deception to even fulfill it. And so we've created an industry on something that I'm perceiving I'm getting. We want you to perceive you're giving empowerment as a content provider, but we are going to use methods to get you to do it. That is the same model as pornography.
Our organization talks a lot about the escalation dynamic, and so I'd love for you to, Joe, to talk more about that. And then if, Victoria, you see like some parallels, for you to comment on that.
Yeah, so the escalation dynamic, if you're not familiar with it, is a phenomenon that we have noticed with interactions with over 1,000 men at the point of arrest or even beyond arrest. And in that interaction, the data, the understanding that we get from conversations that we have with them, we saw this pattern. I saw this pattern starting to really emerge. And it was, how does somebody get to a point of arrest? What happens before that intersection? Because that's an outcome. What happened before that? And I established a stair step based on common interviews that we saw. And the escalation dynamic really starts with, okay, what in our common culture do we see on social media that's very sexualized? And maybe that leads then to something that we would consider softcore pornography. You know, in America, the FCC decides this is softcore because it doesn't have this, this, and this in it. Well, softcore pornography does have 80, 90% of the women in it experience some degradation, some insult, some physical abuse, some whatever it is. And we have to ask ourselves why that is. And so the escalation then kind of answers that with the next stair step, hardcore pornography. Because one of the most powerful parts of your brain deals with aggression and sexuality. When you can combine those two, we've created a formula for compulsion. And that's what hardcore pornography does. So we see this escalation continue, and along the way, the person who's watching it doesn't understand the manipulation that's happening. You know, the hardcore porn industry actually has people who map the human brain working for it. They know what content's going to really catch somebody to come back on, and they create categories based on that. The average viewer, I'd say almost no viewer, understands that when they're looking at it. So they're already in this process of escalation that they don't even really understand. And then that pursuit, that reward-seeking behavior, call it what you will, takes them to this next level. Okay, I've seen it, but I kind of want to experience it or be around it. And that could be a webcam virtually, which they can find right there conveniently on the same site. Isn't that convenient shopping? Like, it's right there. And in fact, it's not just right there. You can't watch more than a few videos without that popping up and saying, you know, meet girls, she'll do what you say, whatever. And I'm really cleaning up the language. Eventually somebody may be like, well, this isn't enough. I want to call the shots. I want to have this engagement. And on a porn site, that's a webcam. But the parallel with OnlyFans is exactly the same as you mentioned before. That escalation continues. Okay, it's virtual. I kind of want to be around it. We have men who tell us that that's where they ended up in a strip club for the first time. They want to be in the environment. And then strip clubs will even bring in women who are porn stars, air quotes, right? To have featured autograph signings, connections, of performance for those men. So we see the manipulation, the connection continue throughout this stair step. And then finally, men find themselves asking, well, what's the difference? You know, she wants money, I want sex. I can experience the real thing. And oh, by the way, that's also on this porn site, Meet Lonely Girls. You click on that, now you're into an escort site where you can go and have a meetup, arrange a price, and you can buy a woman faster than you can order a pizza. Like, that's just a fact. Being in this sales process, this escalation, is something that the buyers don't realize until later, most of them. And when we talk with them, we take them through those steps. The things they say and the way that they come to this realization, be honest, we're about accountability. And so they need to feel some hard things. It's heartbreaking to see a man come to that realization and understand what he's thrown away, whether it's a family relationship, whether it's a wife, whether it's being a member of his church, whatever. And to see that this manipulation that was both soft and very overt in other times bring them to the point of buying sex. That's the escalation dynamic. How did they get there? Where did it start? And what was the path along the way? So I wonder, as you've told stories about girls and what they experience, are you seeing any parallels at all there?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's two angles that I kind of want to touch on, and we'll talk about, I guess, from a buyer perspective first, and then we can talk about, I guess, the escalation for the girls. But what I think is really unique, if that's the word you want to use, with the OnlyFans dynamic is, as you're saying that on pornography, you can, like traditional type of pornography websites, okay, you might start at this level, and you go to this level, and then you go to this level. Well, one of the biggest allures of OnlyFans, as we have already established, is that communication that you're constantly having with the girl. Well, on OnlyFans, you have these things called custom requests. So you can send a girl, because obviously she's putting up continuous porn on her page. But if you want something else, you can send her a custom request for a certain amount of money. And they're really encouraged, especially from an agency perspective. You want a lot of custom requests as well. And this will kind of all tie in on OnlyFans. There's other things that I think are necessary to explain, but it's very common for men to ask for themselves to be belittled, to be put down, to be degraded for money. Findom, which is financial domination, is very common as well on these platforms. And the whole reason I'm wanting to name these things is these are kind of the entry points that we see.
That's the entry point.
Yeah, these are very common things that they're not on the extreme level. They're like when we have our questionnaire, some of the things we ask is, hey, are you comfortable with the fact that your subscribers will ask for you to write their names on them, to do other things that I won't kind of mention, but pretty hardcore things. But that's the entry level. And they're kind of the industry standards of things that subscribers ask for. So if you have this entry level point that is already these extreme things, then that's where we see OnlyFans facilitates even more hardcore fantasy things, so more twisted, more weird. And two of the examples that I give of this is one subscriber had asked one of the girls to blow up balloons to a specific size and wear specific sandals and stomp on the balloons. People go, that's a joke. He's kidding. I was like, no. Pull on the thread. Yeah. This man has paid good money for a girl to do an obscure task which he gets sexually aroused by. Mm-hmm. Why are these weird inanimate objects something that even perhaps you could parallel to childlike things? Balloons, why is that getting someone off? Yeah. And we facilitate a space for that and encourage that. And the other one that I think is really, and again, to this escalation point that you're talking about, another request which kind of really stuck with me was one of the subscribers asked, can you recreate the girl, a guy that's like standing on a ledge and his fingers are on the ledge, and he goes, it doesn't have to be in danger in real life, but can you make it look like he is? And then can you step on his fingers? And again, people are like, oh, that's so stupid. But it's like, no. Someone has asked, can you reenact someone being in danger and their life being threatened? And that's what is getting me off. So back to your point. If OnlyFans is fulfilling any type of request that you want, no matter how obscure it is, in the name of money and liberation, that subscriber is going to get to a point where seeing that on a screen doesn't do anything anymore. And so then perhaps this person that gets off to people being in danger, well, I need to see someone in danger now. And so you can see that escalation, but I feel like it's almost more perhaps encouraged to be more extreme from an earlier entry point because of the fact that you have all these options that are, again, kind of industry encouraged. And then I guess to kind of parallel it to the girls, what we were talking about as well, on the creator side, one of the things that we had in our questionnaire when we went on board girls is this thing called levels. And so we had all different levels that were your entry point. So level 1 was Instagram content, bikini and lingerie. Level 2 was implied nude. Level 3 was like full nudity and sex. Level 4, excuse the language, was everything but anal. And then level 5 was everything. Mm-hmm. And so you're already being inaugurated into a system where you might perhaps come on, again, this perception we have of OnlyFans that I can do what I want, I can this, I can that. But, oh, wait a minute, you're actually telling me there's categories and there's levels that I have to fit into. And so then, again, if you're looking at levels and you're psychologically going, well, I just want to be at level 1. Oh, wait a minute, does that mean there's a ladder that I have to climb to get to success here? Mm-hmm. And then as well, I guess an unspoken culture that was with the work side of it was, oh, well, you're struggling to make money. Well, she's just level 3. What does she expect type of thing?
Yes.
So what is that softly influencing these girls then? And then even as we come along in that, as time went on and we saw that a lot of girls who were level 1 weren't really making a lot of money and we had some frustrations, I was the one that actually suggested, why don't we just get rid of level 1? And so then your baseline level is actually implied nude. So you don't even get that choice anymore. So again, that comes to this escalation, but in a different perspective of, wait a minute, I've jumped on here. I thought that this was what I was going to, this is what now I'm doing that now. And then it's there forever and you can't take it back. And so I think that they're kind of like the dualities or like the mirror reflections of the escalation you were talking about in OnlyFans.
In that last thing you said, why do we even have that level? You were escalated working there. Starting to understand, oh, this is our model. Within that model, this is how we make money. And to make money, why are we even doing this base? Let's get rid of that. The escalation is something that is an acclamation for everybody. And what, not to keep with the ION theme, but simulation. What gets simulated eventually along the escalation dynamic, softcore pornography to hardcore pornography, it accelerates, yes, but it escalates to more experience. So if somebody wants to simulate somebody on a ledge getting their fingers stomped on and falling, it reminds me of deep, dark places within pornography like snuff films. If you're not familiar with that, it is where, in a sexual context, people are harmed or murdered. And these snuff films became very, very, there's a whole story behind it. Really part of the elite of society was buying these things. But before we go down that road, the whole point of it is that escalation, where does it go? We don't actually know. And even if it doesn't come to some sort of murder, what's the acting out behavior once somebody has been indulging in that content when they finally get to the escalation where they're buying? When we consider how do we bring a product to the point where it's ready to be consumed, and just keep it in general terms, anything, right? There has to be something that gets it to a point where it is appealing to be consumed or available to be consumed. There's a price that I will pay for it. And so I think about the commonalities of human trafficking, pornography, OnlyFans. There's a grooming process for not only the buyer, getting them to a point to groom them and say, this is okay, you can have it, it's this much, or it's free, don't worry about it. And then the flip side of that is the person who's creating the content. They'll be manipulated to create the content, telling them they're going to make a lot of money and that they're going to be desired, all of that. If you took that out and dropped it into what traffickers tell women who are prostituted and trafficked, it's the same story. It all comes back to grooming.
Yeah, totally. And I think that a parallel that I do make is exactly that. And when I talk about the recruitment process for the agency, I say, what is the difference between a bunch of women that are scouring the internet and messaging girls that look young to do porn? Then imagine if we were standing on a street corner and we were like going up to young girls and saying, hey, I think you're really cute. Have you ever considered doing OnlyFans? Have you ever considered doing porn? You'd be like, get away, like you're a freak. Yeah. Like people would call the police on us. Yeah. But I think it's such a unique, I don't know, like situation that because it's happening online, does that therefore mean that it's less than? Does that mean that it's okay? And like, that's a broader, I guess, cultural conversation as well of glorifying this stuff, accepting this stuff, and thinking that it's okay through the magnitude that we see in society has desensitized us into thinking things such as OnlyFans blurs this line now of, are they a victim of trafficking? I think so. You guys would know this better, but like the definition of trafficking, the US has like coercion and manipulation in it.
Force, fraud, or coercion.
Yeah. And it's like, that's exactly what OnlyFans is doing, but it's doing it on this grand scale and through social media, through such a magnitude. You could even say, potentially, if we're really zooming out on a big cultural picture here of what's happening in this kind of grooming element, anyone who promotes OnlyFans, any celebrity, anyone who's any news outlet that's like, look at all the money that this is softly grooming people on a huge scale to think, oh, this is okay. Well, this is sex work, because then it all correlates, because now we know that the OnlyFans industry and the sex industry is actually the same thing. When you can really zoom out and see the bigger picture of what's happening here on a societal level, it's like there is a mass grooming digitally to accept sex work, to accept prostitution, to accept extortion, to accept all these things. And so then I guess it kind of leads on into, well, like, what's the reality of that, and what do we do with that, I guess?
I think about any industry. If I want to survive and I want to be a thriving industry, I can't focus on what's working right now. I have to think about my next customer base. If I am selling shoes, I want to sell shoes to a 10-year-old, not a 30-year-old. A 30-year-old has money. I do want their money, but I want that 10-year-old to come up, and I have to tier my products so that they can be attracted to things at the age they are. And I can't wait till I have a job because I'm going to buy my first Air Jordans, whatever, right? So that's a consumer mindset, and it's just a standard practice in industry. I need to be thinking about the next decade of customers, and I should always be shaping my business to bring them along. The illicit sex industry does the exact same things. How do I find out what people want now and make sure that we have inventory? Or how do I make them want the thing that I know we can get and profit the most off of? That's the part about demand no one talks about. Even in our org, we talk about demand. You're not setting the demand. The demand is actually being laid out for you, and you're brought along into a fold of what's most profitable. I go back to previous career. I was in wireless sales when I was younger. We rolled out these nationwide plans, and nobody was really traveling and needed a nationwide plan. They weren't even really called. I'm talking about physically taking your phone from Texas to Maine. You can do that, and it's all one price. We created this consumerism mindset that you want and need this, and it's a better value than what they're giving you for just Texas, even though 95% of your calls and work and everything was here in your home state. So you paid more for a perceived value. You paid more for something else. So we created a market of that, and then people wanted it. Creating a market is industry 101. And so you were talking before about young girls. How do we create this perception? How do we have barely legal, freshly legal, whatever the term is? Well, we have content that justifies consuming it. And when we do that, the inhibitions drop. The barriers that otherwise would exist drop. I get to have this cognitive dissonance where I'm not thinking about, well, I have a niece that age. Like, no, I don't have to do that anymore. Now I'm a consumer of a product, and the product's legal, and everybody said it's okay to consume it. That is really what we're up against when we talk about this entire industry and how it keeps reshaping itself and then reshaping us as consumers.
Yeah, I think just like on that, like a mind shift perspective that perhaps needs to happen, especially like in this like activism field, is even just noticing it. And I guess because it is legal and I do come from a business background in this, I think that there perhaps maybe needs to be that shift of going, these aren't big bad people that are out here, which they are, not negating that, but how can we have a business mindset on this? Because there's an element that I've noticed to this industry on the back end that it has speed, it has innovation, it has all these other elements that it seems like coming now into this activism space, it's just catching tail, but it's because there's the wrong perception of it. And I think that you're really correct in the lens that you have of, well, if we look at this like a business and we look at this from a money perspective, and perhaps because the people that are in these industries, we didn't necessarily see the humanity element of it. We just saw the financial gain element of it. How can you systemize things? How can you make things more efficient? How can you maximize, increase output, all the different things? And so that's why it can run that way. But in the activism space, I guess people, which is a good thing, see the humanity element. But that's why they're always kind of backtracking. And I think that it's a really excellent point that you kind of made of how do we look at this from a sales perspective, because then that's where you can, again, kind of this theme of shatter the illusion for the buyers and for the girls as well. Because wait a minute, now we're seeing that, well, this is just a business that I'm getting inaugurated in, so then I can get exploited for it. So I don't really want to be a part of that. Again, using the correct verbiage and terms that actually need to be used. So then we can sit there and go, wait, okay, this is the reality. I'm an informed consumer. Okay, well, this is actually what I'm going to get into. And so I think that that's why language is so important. And that's even something that, I thought it was so beautiful to say that, like, even in this OnlyFans sphere, because now we're seeing the lines blurred. You're not an OnlyFans content creator, you're a sex worker. You're not subscribing to an OnlyFans page. You're actually purchasing sex, And so I think that that's a really great point of what we can do culturally to start to see that shift. So then we can help people make better informed decisions on what they're actually doing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Phuong, I think about your work previously in anti-trafficking and your work with teen trafficking survivors. And I just wonder, as we're having this conversation, how many parallels you're seeing to younger, and in this, I don't know, just this whole industry and how it's not just fantasy. It does a lot of times become a catalytic agent to acting out behavior. I don't know. Does any of this kind of come together for you?
Yeah, I think the thing that we talk a lot about demand disruption too is that part of that escalation dynamic that we were going through earlier, where there's that illegal to legal threshold, where here I am, I'm consuming pornography, but there's that sales cycle that eventually you pass that legal threshold and you have to be consumed more and having that lived experience. And I hear about the experience of the clients that you had at OnlyFans, like the levels and what they were, almost coerced to do. And I kind of boil it down to what does our culture and our society is willing to accept? Because, the teen trafficking victims that I've worked with, they range between 9 to 15 years old. And so more and more we see, as human trafficking awareness progresses, we see more this impact that digitally all of this is having on our youth. And so I think there is those parallels there where you see, the categories that, consumers look up on porn, child pornography even, and then to the things that you were talking about with the content that the girls are making. I just kind of think about how can we together see these parallels and then, engage our community in a way for them to understand there is that correlation. There is a correlation between that digital exploitation, the consumers, the buyers, and then who eventually is being impacted, the victims.
There's this fog that passes over the entire community. We're all in the fog together. It really helps us stop and try to plot, okay, well, but where are we right now and how do we proceed? Creating content is a very general term for creating a market, satiating that market, and not really asking should we, just can we? And if we can profit, and if we can do it, and we can get girls to do it, and we can get people to consume it, that's just business. And that is not responsible enough. It's a willful ignorance in terms of how we proceed. And then as a culture, we have to question that and challenge it because we have the power to do that. We're so often worried about how overwhelming all of this can be. But there's a power of individuality that ties directly to your identity. What do I believe? And how am I seeing things in my life that are conflicting with that? And if they are conflicting and I can't control how to stop them, who can I get help from? And that's really what I hope this conversation is. Let's zoom out. Let's look at what it is. Let's put it in different terms. Let's put it in terms we're comfortable with and we're already functioning with. And then let's bring it back and tell the truth about what those terms actually mean, and then the power we have to make a difference in them.
Yeah, and I think that like great, I guess, actionables or things is saying that, hey, this is the reality of what's going on. Now, hopefully anyone who is listening to this can then now, and again, I just love the way that you put it, Joe, not stop being consumed by this, because again, people think that they're the consumers, but there's this, again, entire industry that's actually consuming you. Yeah. But now that we have the capacity and we've kind of understood the inner workings, again, really define some terms here, we can then now sit on our phones and identify these things. So perhaps now for a buyer, this hypersexualized video is coming up. Now, hopefully that illusion's just shattered, even if there's a little bit of a barrier now to be able to say, oh, I'm informed on this. Hold on.
I see what you're doing.
I see what you're doing. I'm not going to play into that. And then you don't even get into the funnel. Yeah. Then you don't even end there. And so you're already having this preventative measure put in place. And then from the girl perspective, I guess, it's about, oh, I've now seen this, my favorite influencer, and she just got 1 million likes on this video with, super suggestive things. Oh, but now I know that maybe perhaps there's an agency that's behind that, and that's a manipulated outcome. So she's not really being rewarded for that, but I'm now being led to believe that I need to be rewarded if I act that way too. So again, it's shattering that illusion and just creating that barrier. And so hopefully then the tools that people can implement is seeing that, unfollowing, stop engaging, perhaps block, maybe report, who knows. But these are just, again, that individualistic things in which we can do to be able to see a new culture being built, because it can be really overwhelming hearing all of this. But on a day-to-day micro level, that is so powerful in and amongst itself. And then the ripple effect of that is, well, now you identify, you're not going to go on OnlyFans, perhaps not on porn. What does that mean? You stop consuming it. Then perhaps you can work on things that are going and see how this then has a really beautiful ripple effect in all elements, because now we've understood it. And then from that, we're now empowered to make a well-informed decision, which is the main thing that we're just trying to champion people with.
Yeah, that's so perfectly put. You're de-incentivizing the exploitation that is so incentivized now because consumerism. You're also making a choice. I'm reminded of something. Let's just take it out of all the illicit sex and awful things we're talking about, and let's flash back to the 90s. Okay, so I'm old enough to have been in the 90s and can say I remember when Nike had this firestorm of judgment from the culture saying, "Wait a second, there are sweatshops that are making your products in like Micronesia and parts of Asia, and those sweatshops have children in them, and they work 16-hour days, and they make $2 a day, maybe. That's unconscionable. Boycott. We're not buying your product." It would have sunk Nike if they didn't already have some incredibly big stars that had that customer following. But that was a social consciousness that was and so when I buy that, their profit margin increases, and it further incentivizes them to continue doing it. They had to change their whole business model and how they fulfill their product to be consumed. We must change the business model. We must question how the product is consumed and if the product should be made in the first place and why we're consuming it. All of those just represented stages of this whole ecosystem that you mentioned earlier. If we can do that, it's not quite as overwhelming as it might have been. It's sort of empowering. Like, wait, I'm not going to give my money to that. In fact, I am going to share this, and I'm going to get behind, and I'm going to sign a petition, and we're going to have a social media movement, and we're going to see them lose profits, be increased in exposure, and we'll see our culture respond accordingly. That's a culture shift, and that's what we're capable of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say, before we even wrap this up, to say thank you to Victoria Thank you for your openness and your kindness and just your willingness to share this message. You are our friend, and we just feel so lucky to be able to call you a partner and friend in this fight. And so please, everyone, uh, take a moment to follow her organization, Creating Gems, and also follow her on social media. She posts just really informative things about her work now. And yeah, no, it's just an incredible place to learn more. I think this conversation was just so incredible in so many ways, right? We talked a lot about, you know, this aspect of OnlyFans and how, it's a sales cycle. And that's something that we talk about so often at Demand Disruption related to pornography, how it is a carefully orchestrated business that's selling you something that isn't real. And so, for us, we just want people to hear this, especially, to our community and to people out there that might be struggling. More than 50% of the subscribers of OnlyFans are married men. And so, we had to think about how can we come alongside the struggling men that, are buying into, this this painted picture that they're getting from OnlyFans, when instead there's real hope, real love, real relationships that are ever present in their everyday life. We talk a lot at Demand Disruption about hope, about healing and restoration, and just showing up. And so for us, I challenge all of us. Let's get that number down, right? Like, how can we, as members in our community, just show up for our everyday people so that they don't have to turn to this? And especially to just want to also talk to our young people. Things may seem very glamorous, right? Especially, on social media. OnlyFans is something that, is popularized, and, it might seem like, oh, whatever. But actually, no, like, as you've heard, like, this is a business and it's targeting you and it's trying to sell you that this is empowerment when, as Victoria said, it's not. It's manipulation and exploitation. And, we hope as well that, you hear this from us, but you also hear it from her. And so, especially to our younger audiences, like, please hear this conversation, hear Victoria's heart, hear her experience as someone inside the work, and know that this isn't what it seems to be. And I just can't end this episode without saying, if you are someone that's struggling with an unwanted sexual behavior, we are here for you. We believe in true healing and restoration. So if you know someone that's struggling or you yourself are struggling, you can email defender@demanddisruption.org anonymously, and we'll work with you. We'll provide tools and resources for you to help get you through, what you're struggling with. Again, thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us in that conversation last year. And thank you to all of you for listening in to the Demand Disruption podcast. Please remember to subscribe and follow us on all of our social media platforms. I hope to see you again in a later episode.